I learned that like Arizona has like kind of a style where we play. We very much a lot of people play the player and not the matchup. So you'll be ready for certain things when you're playing a certain guy, but then when you play somebody else playing that same character, there's a whole bunch of gaps in the game that you didn't know about.
Hello, and welcome to the Absolute Guard Podcast.
Welcome. This is episode 38. My name is Betty. I'm not muted now. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host John, who recently said that he's going all in on Street Fighter Duel. Is that right?
All in. Yeah, all in. All the money that I've got, pushing it forward into that ether of a black hole for money and whaling. No, I'm done. I think I figured that out. It was like 2 nights ago, I think, when I decided like I had missed a day because we had gone to Tucson this past weekend to actually play real fighting games, and then I missed like the midnight like ending deadline for one of the event things, and I was like, you know what, fuck this. I feel like I was feeling like irritated with myself, and like I was missing out because I screwed up the event, and now I have like less of a chance of maximizing all of the profits from the event and stuff. And I'm just like, this is a chore. This is just an actual chore, and I could actually be doing real chores in my house instead. Because it was like 1 or 2 hours every night, man. So I think I'm done for a little bit at least. How about you? Are you still playing it?
I'm playing it here and there, just pretty much around midnight, maybe get an hour in, and then that's about it. Usually it's at work, since I work at night, so it's just like I'm at work when the clock hits midnight, and then it's like, all right, this will kill some time for the next hour or so, and then I'll go back to watching something or playing something else.
Yeah, that's a good look if you're multitasking with it. I think the game is pretty okay at multitasking. Yep. So yeah, I mentioned that we went to Tucson this past Friday. So the Phoenix Street Fighter scene, we try very very regularly to go down and visit them. By regularly, I mean I think we've done it twice now. But Tucson consistently comes up to visit us, and so I thought we'd try to repay the favor. Realistically, right now Tucson is a bigger fighting game scene than the Phoenix scene is, just because Phoenix is more spread out and Tucson's more localized. And we got a chance to see that firsthand this past weekend. One of the folks, the Vanguard that was welcoming me in Tucson, is our guest today. It's Mike Thompson, aka AZ Thrasher. Is it Thrasher or AZ Thrasher now?
It's good to be back for sure. Like, yeah, man. It was a blast having you down here this past weekend. Had a lot of fun, a lot of good matches. Yeah, Chun, your Chun is still
Chun is my main in Street Fighter Duel too. By the way, Chun is my main in Street Fighter Duel. But yeah, I
haven't really touched that yet. I'm against phone games, man. Like, I don't know, if it's not something simple. I don't want, like you called it earlier, a chore. I don't need a recurring thing. I have to worry about timers and. No, I have it installed, but I've touched it once. Not my cup of tea.
It's like a unique trend for gaming that's, snuck into mainstream gaming too, like dailies or like things that like you have to work it into your schedule essentially. And I don't think Street Fighter 6 is going to be any different. I think there's probably going to do like there were even in the closed beta, there were like online quests that you had to do that gave you the fight money or whatever the equivalent was to buy stuff for your dude.
No, it's interesting you bring that up, because that's something that's definitely been almost incorporated in like every game that I've played nowadays, whether it's Call of Duty, Fortnite back in the day. It was like, yeah, you have daily challenges, weekly challenges, that kind of stuff. Like, and like you said, like when it comes to Street Fighter Duel, you're talking about it being a chore. Like that's
Mhm.
what Fortnite became to me like a couple years ago. Like I would literally log on at the time that the missions would become available. Then I would go do the missions, even if it was by myself. And then my
Yeah.
friends would be like, "Do you want to play?" And I'm like, "No, I'm okay. I did all my stuff for today." And like, the whole point was to be playing with my friends, and here I was just like going through the motions and trying to get these like little things done, and that's what was appeasing me, really.
It feels like it's like a natural evolution from achievement culture. Like when Xbox started rolling out those achievements to like make you feel good about playing the game that you bought. Like I feel like it's gotten to that point now where everybody kind of just wants to check a list. Even like open world games, like the general um, flow the games tend to be check a list. I'm biased. I hate open world games, but it's like I don't know. Like there's just people have found ways to like monetize time, and then like
Mhm.
it's. I think any live service game I think has that issue right now, and that's actually like one of the downsides I think to free to play, where the model like it's you're basically burdened with having to subscribe to that model of dailies and stuff. So like I really liked Rumbleverse a lot. I thought Rumbleverse was a really fun game, but like the free to play bullshit, like it wasn't bad compared to like some like Street Fighter Duel or anything, but it was still annoying to be like, oh look, I have these quests and now I have to do these quests and I have to play the game the way the quests want me to.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I played WoW back in the day, so I've done more dailies than I ever want to do like in my life again. Like I put that step behind me. So that game is like a drug. So
Yeah.
I'm done with it. And just the daily thing, it's like you said, when you forget once, then you're like beating yourself up about it. Like damn it, now I'm not gonna get everything I was gonna get out of this before, so you don't even feel like playing anymore, and then it sucks you back in like a month from now. So we'll see. I'll be watching to see if you get
Yeah.
sucked back in.
I'm thinking that might happen, but at the same time, like another Street Fighter game is going to be coming out pretty soon, and so maybe I'll play that one instead.
Yeah. Yeah, you got like 6 weeks. 6 weeks to go.
God, I
Yeah.
can't wait. Can't
6
wait.
weeks. Have you guys heard any news of like launch tournaments or anything? Any like big time or even locally?
Not
No.
anything like that. Nothing like official or at any of like the stores or anything like that. I haven't heard anything about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm bad
I
at following FGC news, so I haven't heard anything.
I was thinking like didn't for 5 didn't they have that Lupe Fiasco launch party, and
Oh,
like he came and beat Daigo in California or something,
yeah. Well,
and
I have a feeling like that stuff will probably come out like 2 weeks beforehand. Like I don't know. It's not like a big major event where it's like Evo and you got to plan like 4 or 5 months in advance. It's kind of just been like because the Street Fighter, the Capcom social media has been real good about trickling out information, whether it's theme songs or random dev matches and stuff like that. So I just imagine like probably 2 weeks beforehand they'll be like, "Hey, we're doing this thing in Los Angeles or whatever, featuring these celebrities or whatever,"
sure.
and it'll be something like that.
We are already kind of seeing a little bit of something like that with that showcase they're doing this Thursday, with
All right.
Lil Wayne and like big announcements. I think the general like feeling is that they're gonna do an open beta at the end of the month, also based on like a leaked like a rumor, I guess.
Oh,
So, and I don't really know how I feel about having an open beta this close to launch. Like it feels like it's just gonna piss people off because they are they can't exactly like what they would likely do is they would like just release the same build that the last 2 betas have been, but I have it like from talking with friends and stuff that like the second beta a lot of people didn't play it because it wasn't anything new, it wasn't different, and there wasn't new characters, right?
exactly.
And by the same token though, like I don't see a good marketing reason for them to put make those characters playable, because you at that point you're essentially giving out the full game like a month before
Yep.
release. Um, And yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. So like my thinking is they'll play it safe and then just release the standard 8 characters that we've been playing in the closed betas, but that's just gonna piss people off, in my opinion. I think they're gonna be like, "What? What do you mean? I want to play Marissa." Everybody wants to play Marissa.
I think it would have been cool for them to like give people access to the game. Maybe not, obviously not matchmaking or versus or anything, but like just finding stuff in training mode. I feel like you could find all sorts of maybe broken things or like bugs just by playing in training mode. If you gave the entire community access to training mode for maybe the last month, you know, you might be able to get some sort of information that maybe you could prevent anything that might arise once the game comes out, you know. But maybe there's some unforeseen reason why they don't do something like that. Maybe people will get sick of the game before it even comes out. I don't know.
There's a potential that they're actually doing that, you know. It's just that they, you know, people that are doing that right now are under NDAs, you know. It could be something like that. Like a smaller group as opposed to just open sourcing it to the entire community.
Yeah.
Because then you get like Joe Schmo being like, you know, this button is too good because DPs are too powerful because I don't ever block them, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's true because they probably give it to the people they trust the most with like game balance. But even top players cry about other things sometimes. So I think no matter what, you're going to get somebody's flavor of how they like to play the game.
Yeah,
in the feedback.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Street Fighter 6, like we previously had you on an episode back in February. I think it was 31, the panel. And then this time we're bringing you back. This is typically like what we call like our biography episodes. You know, learn more about you as a player, kind of like your origins and everything like that. So I want to kind of dial it back to starting from there. So John asked you in the beginning whether it was Thrasher or AZ Thrasher, but what's the origin of where that name even comes from and why you use it?
It's extremely not even creative at all, like compared to like some of the other people you've had on. So I did a lot of skateboarding back in the day around the time where I started to get into emails or Xbox Live. So like my original name was like a play on concrete and Thrasher. So it was like Crete Thrasher, but people could not say it whenever they saw it. The amount of Call of Duty lobbies where people would just butcher that name was crazy. So when I was I didn't come up with cutting off the Crete for Thrasher until I was going to my first tournament ever, which was run by, you know, the host here. It was a MujiCon. Yeah. I don't know if John remembers, but he had to explain to me the rules of my first tournament. So
that was double elimination specifically, right? You had a second life if you lost. That one.
Yeah, I think I had some idea because I'm kind of grandfathered into the community, which I'll go into in a bit. But yeah, on the car ride up, I was with Isaac and Ernest, and they're like, "So what's your name going to be?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that. Well, I'm not using Crete Thrasher. That's stupid." So I was like, "Screw it. I'll just Thrasher." There we go. I think I came up with that name as we were walking into like the college. Nice. And I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to go with. And then it's been that ever since. I've thrown like AZ on it, you know, in times where I've been really hype about being in the scene. And then I've taken it away when I've been angry about being in the scene. So now it's just kind of like, all right, Thrasher. People, it flows better than having AZ in the front a little bit. So I still love the scene. Don't hate me for taking off AZ, but
a lot of people, they put that, you know, that AZ or like my name that has the AK, like they put that qualifier just for uniqueness, right? Because like it's funny because like I didn't know it until I joined the scene that everybody was like, Grandmaster B, like there's another Grandmaster B here, and I'm like, what? And it's some other guy that, you know, that Rick and Scott and them used to play with back in the day, and I was just like, okay, well, whatever, I'm AK Grandmaster B, so it doesn't matter. But you know, it's still funny to find that, you know, there's people with similar names. So I mean, there's probably a Thrasher somewhere, maybe not in AZ, but you know, I'll be like, oh, this guy?
Well, it's mine, so you better change it.
Change it to Thrasher.
Oh God! Just when I thought Thrasher was too difficult to say. Man, the amount of times, I don't know if it's subliminal. They were just letting me know, hey, by the way, you're Thrasher.
Specifically, it was the brothers from TGZ, right? They would just mispronounce your name and call it Thrasher over the microphone.
Yeah, so it was like whenever they were calling the matches for the tournament, Thrasher versus Muji. Like, all right, cool.
Yep.
So that's why I played off that when I signed up for the beta. It was Thrasher. It was kind of an inside joke for the people who knew,
Yep. We had a lot of fun with those names, I think.
But yeah, that's the very uninteresting origin of it. Just a lot of skateboarding back in the day when I was a much thinner man back then. But yeah, skateboarding.
Nice.
You mentioned you were grandfathered in. So like, how did you end up starting fighting games ultimately, or like starting to play them?
So when I was in the Air Force for 4 years. I got out, and when I was coming back to Tucson, I didn't really I'd lost touch with the friends from high school, and my brother-in-law Ernest played fighting games. Everybody knows, pretty much everyone in Arizona knows who Ernest is. Yeah,
he's come up on our show a couple times. Usually as the butt of a joke for a money match or something. A lot of people like use Ernest as the measuring stick, being like, I beat Ernest in this match, and that was a memorable one for me.
That's true.
So I was coming back, and I was like, all right, well, Ernest is pretty much the only person I know, and he plays fighting games, so whatever. I guess I'll learn fighting games. And I had that zero respect for how hard it was going to be to actually learn to play fighting games. So I figured, give me a month or two, and then I'll be able to play with Ernest, and it'll be it'll be fine. And then when I told him I was going to play, he's like, all right, I'll teach you, but you have to buy a stick. Which now, a little maybe not the best advice, but at the time that was the standard. And with plinking and stuff in 4, it was a little bit better than pad at the time. And so I kind of decided in the car driving with my wife, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to play. And she's like, okay. So she got on her phone and looked for arcade sticks and found a TE1, just like the one that Ernest had, at a Bookman's. The Bookman's that's no longer here on Grant and Campbell. And so she's like, hey, it's over there. So we pretty much diverted off the highway, went there, picked it up. I got the game. Went home and started doing challenges, and realized, man, I'm trash. I can't do anything. Fireballs were hard at the time,
What game was this?
This was Street Fighter 4. It was AE 2012 at the time. So I started in the summer of 2012, and without her, I wouldn't even be in fighting games because 1, I wouldn't know Ernest. And 2, she got me my first arcade stick. So shout outs to my wife, Jessica, for kind of starting down this whole path. So anyone who I've made salty, you can blame her. But yeah, so I started to learn, doing the basic stuff. And one thing that Ernest, he might be the butt of jokes, but one thing he pounded into my head was, you need to be fundamentally sound. You have to learn fundamentals. So he kind of was like, you could pick a Shoto. So I picked Ken initially to start, and quickly was like, this is too high execution requirement for my tiny brain, fighting game brain at the time. So I was just like, he said, well, Ryu's better, and he's an easier version of Ken. At the time, that's what we thought was the case. And it might have been the case back in AE 2012. Honestly, I don't remember. But so I was playing with Ryu, learning how to do low forward fireballs. And he took me to an event where I think at this point, I still wasn't 100% sold on fighting games. I was just kind of learning, and it was hard and it was annoying. But then we went to Arcade in a Box. And at this point, Arcade in a Box had already been closed. It wasn't like an actual open business anymore. It was just kind of a hangout for the Tucson crew. And he's like, yeah, we're going to go watch this fighting game tournament. One of the guys that used to be in Tucson is playing in it, and it's in Japan. And it was the SBO of that year where Latif was there, and it was like PR Rog, Latif, and somebody else. I forget. I don't know who the other person on the team was. So,
they wouldn't be in this chat, would they?
yeah, I honestly don't remember.
Oh, shoot. Oh, it was Mr. SNK was Latif's partner.
There we go.
SBO. There you go. Chronicle in
so
history.
So those three in Japan doing that at the time? That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. Shout out to Nico for making that team. But yeah, I was watching that and just the hype of the room, because there's probably like 20 people in there. I was like, this is sick. I don't know what the hell's going on, but everybody seems to really like what is happening on the screen right now. So I literally was watching and practicing, like just doing inputs in the back of the room while everybody was getting hype. And it kind of sold me on like, oh, I definitely want to keep doing this. And from there, playing online, I was like, why am I playing Ryu? Like, Akuma has all the same moves, but just he has more of them. That was my logic at the time, not knowing I was about to drop Ryu for like the best character in the game at the time. So, yeah, that's kind of how it started for me, was those three characters.
If I could interject real quick. So SNK is in our chat right now and has just corrected me. This was he was partners with Latif and qualified for SBO at a different time. The one that you're talking about was a team of three with it looks like Dominion, PR Rog, and Latif.
Okay. I remember PR Rog and Latif, but I could not remember. And I feel bad. I like Dominion. He's great.
Dominion's a great player. Yeah.
He's another guy I want to see come back in 6. He was actually the guy who invented Mora Doom originally, I believe, or he at least invented like the Shadow Super with Morrigan stuff, like being able to do Soul and then fill the screen, and then Chris G perfected it with the Doom missiles. So Dominion's, he's like a zoner extraordinaire. I'm curious about how he would like 6.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and just to go on top of that, Mr. SNK was part of the SBO qualifier you're talking about. I think it was the year before, and he was part of that team, No SBO for You. And the controversy around that was that him and Latif ended up winning the qualifying spot, and a lot of people gave him crap about it, saying that Latif carried him, and then they ended up forfeiting the spot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So like they went to like SoCal, they like ran through everybody, won the qualifier, and then they didn't even they had to forfeit the spot.
Because Mike Ross won anyway, right? I think that was what ended up happening.
I'm not sure about the rest of it, but I just remember that part. I remember all the backlash and stuff that Nico got as a result, and just the fact that they were just like, why would you guys even come here if you guys weren't even gonna end up going to the tournament?
For that reaction, completely.
A modern day parallel is like, why would IDOM enter a Capcom Cup qualifier, right? When he was guaranteed a spot in Capcom Cup, and there's reasons for all of it. Like on both sides, rather. I would say that, it's just to prove yourself. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you were destined to go anyway, right? You should be able to beat anybody that's there. So it's like,
like, who would not do that? I mean, most people who are making it to Capcom Cup are competitors. They're going to enter every tournament they can, regardless of how much is on the line or how little. So, yeah, like I'd be more surprised if he didn't enter, that tournament. So,
what's your opinion on like this happened? I think at this year's Capcom Cup, where some players entered the tournament knowing that they wouldn't be able to make top 8, or like make it to top 8 the next day, but then qualified for top 8, so they had to DQ themselves.
That's a little bit, I don't know. That's a rough one, because there's two sides of it. It's like, if you wanted to be in that spot as the person salty about it, you should have won. But also, there's the production side of it. Now you have missing people for top 8, and the production suffers. So it's like you're hurting the event overall, I think. But at the same time, the people crying about it should have played better. I have kind of a split opinion on that. It's like I don't feel for the people crying, but I feel for the guy running the event, you know, who wants a hype top 8. So I would say don't do it just based off that. Like if you can't participate in the whole event, DQ yourself before top 8. You can block everybody up to that point and then handshake somebody and give them a free top 8 appearance. But don't do that and then DQ yourself when you're in top 8. I think that's a bad look.
Okay. I think that if there wasn't a lot of nuance to this conversation, it wouldn't have been such a controversy. But so yeah, I definitely I feel you there. Okay, so Ernest taught you some basic fighting game fundamentals. You're messing with Akuma, and then I derailed the conversation. What happened after your first sets of tournaments, and like when did you like really start getting the itch to be extra? Well, actually, you mentioned that it was when you saw Evo, right? Or when you saw SBO rather.
Yeah, that's when I was like, I kind of like I really want to be good at this. It was still a very long road ahead of me, but it gave me more like hype to just kind of grind online and do stuff because I was at the time I didn't really. Shortly after that SBO, I ended up getting a job where I worked on the weekends, so I couldn't go out to as many Arcade in a Box sessions, and that really kind of stunted my growth. I think as a player, because I was playing mainly online against people who weren't very good, and Street Fighter 4 didn't really have like a matchmaking system similar to 5, where you were kind of going through the ranks and working up to harder and harder competition. It was just kind of like whoever joined your lobby or whoever's lobby you joined.
Yep.
So like sometimes you would just get destroyed, and then sometimes you could farm points from a guy for as long as he would let you and kind of make it higher. But but there was no guarantee of like good competition.
Yeah.
And I did play, some of the guys over the time. I would play like Isaac and stuff online. But it just going out in that time would have been a much, faster growth for me. So I played Akuma pretty much the entire life of AE 2012. And then when Ultra came out, everything kind of lined up. I got fired and I ended up getting a job that had the weekends off, and I switched to Dudley. And I had also grown closer with more people in the scene like Nick and Rock and all those guys. And I was able to make it to more things. At this point, Abe had moved to Phoenix, and it was Maker House time. So Nick came back, and he was kind of...
I forgot about Maker House.
And he like head up the scene and took that mantle that Abe had unfortunately had to leave behind. And in that time, he was a pain in my ass. Like the amount of chicken wings I ate and the shit talk I ate.
Yeah.
It was a lot. There was plenty of times where I just wanted to like headbutt Nick going while we were playing, but it kind of taught you how to deal with that mental game,
Yeah. I mean, that's somebody we talked to previously. Nick going Driftwood, and like it was without a doubt, I'd say probably easily top 5 in our scene at the time with Fei Long, and doing well for himself. And like you said, the trash talk, like that's just Nick. Like he's mind games and all of trying to get into your head. And I know it rubs some people the wrong way, but from my era, like I kind of love that stuff. Like it's one of those things. It's just like if you're gonna act like that, like you better be ready to back it up. And more times than not, he backed it up with his play.
Yeah.
But those times, like when he'd lose, like he would have to hold it. Like whether it was from Mr. SNK and them going back and forth, or anybody else, like when you take a loss, and like people would be hamming it up, and it's just like rightfully so, because like he would be giving it to you.
Yeah. Oh, I skipped one tiny thing that happened. So when I worked at Dish, I was at lunch, literally in the middle of nowhere at a McDonald's, and SCR 2012 was going on. And I was like, okay, I'm watching this on my phone, and I see this white dude get up there to fight Infiltration. And I'm like, all right, Infiltration's about to body this dude, whatever. And then all of a sudden I see he wins a round, and I look at the camera, and there's a bunch of AZ guys in the back. And I'm like, okay, is this guy from Arizona? So now I'm on his side. I'm like, all right, let's go random white guy I don't even know. And we all know that was, Mike Prosek, Luminaire. He is, a butt hair away from taking down Infiltration in his most deadly time,
Yep.
And I got super hype at this McDonald's, and people are looking at me, and so that was another thing that added to, like, all right, there's good people in this scene. I wanna get better, But yeah, so back to the Maker House time. Nick's pissing me off. I don't think there's one person in this scene that Nick hasn't pissed off at some point. But that being said, his shenanigans definitely helped. I look back on it now. I was salty then, but now I'm like, all right. Because of that, I have the ability to do that to guys now. I could play the mind games, and a lot of that is credited to Nick. So Ernest kind of was the pillar for. I had like 3 like main pillars for my fighting game development. The first one was Ernest with fundamentals. The second one was Nick with the mind games. He like taught me how to deal. You got to be able to deal with dumb stuff, and if you can't, then they're just going to do it to you over and over again. The third person who was a huge influence, more like on this like philosophical side of the fighting games, was Aziz.
Yeah.
Aziz in that time.
Okay.
He was very much like a monk, kind of teaching me the game, and it helped a lot. And also during that time, the weeklies in Phoenix started happening. Because I now had weekends off, I could travel. So Nick, John, Tyler, and myself, we would every week hop in the car, drive up to Phoenix for the Street Fighter 4 weeklies. And in that time, I seen the craziest growth in my game. Just putting yourself in that high stress tournament situation every week. There's no better practice than that. And especially Steve, that bastard, he would constantly give me either Driftwood, Velociraptor, or Yusuf second round, literally for like 7 weeks in a row. And then eventually he told me, he's like, it's because I know that you are somebody who can upset them. So that's why I keep giving you them second round. And eventually I did end up upsetting one of them. I upset Nick. It was great. All of the shit talk. But like I said,
I'm sure he took the loss very gracefully.
No, he kind of did. He was like explaining what he did wrong, but he's like, all right, good shit. Like he's very humble when he does lose, at least with me. I can only speak for myself.
That's you bring up Ernest, who people in the scene know as Crazy EX, and then Aziz, who was White Tower Akbar.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are two well respected people in our community too that I think we need to bring on the show at some time. But just the fact that there's those 3 people, because like you said, you have Ernest, who very fundamentally sound, very like a soft spoken person. He doesn't really talk, right? Like he's there, he plays his game, he does well. Then you have Nick, who's really outspoken, more than probably anybody in the scene since and even up to now. That and then you have Aziz, like you said, the philosophical part, and that's a great balance of like 3 different kinds of players, and the kind of way that they like approach the game. Like that's a really good balance of people there.
There was that Core A of Gaming video where they kind of described the different kinds of players, heart, mind, and body. And Nick is heart, Aziz is mind, and Ernest is body.
Yeah.
Like execution is body, mind is like kind of, I think that's like the mix-ups and the mind games and stuff. Or well, kind of. And then a heart, I guess, is the more I get into this, the more the analogy falls apart. Just take it as it is.
They all kind of.
I'm breaking it down.
They all kind of cross over and kind of lean on each other. It's more like a teepee than it is pillars, I guess. You take any one of those away, and the whole house comes down. Like
Yeah.
so.
Well,
The
that's just
TV.
cool. Like you're like amalgamation of all three of them. So like you got pieces of every part. It's like the whole kind of like Bruce Lee mentality. Like you're not taking all of Ernest. You're taking some of what you learned from Ernest, some of what you learned from Nick, and some of what you learned from Aziz, and that makes you.
Yeah. If I had to contribute on it, it's like Aziz's mindset and the way he thought about things, like kind of helps me find new things. Like develop the character that I'm playing. Maybe find things that other people aren't doing, which is definitely something that happened later in my career. Then Nick, the mind games and stuff helps you get over like bad matchups, because then you're not playing the matchup that's poor. You can play the person and you could beat them with mind games in a way you might not be able to beat them with just fundamentals, because the matchup is so terrible. But then like the fundamental side is how you get through the scrubs. You just sit there, you let them kill themselves, and you can move on to your next tournament match. Like it's that simple a lot of times, and a lot of times people overcomplicate it. So
Ernest has a reputation in our scene for being a robot. And that comes with the positive and the negative connotations. But the positive is that if you have a routine that you can just run through people and they can't deal with it, then it's as simple as executing, right? That you don't have to worry about outsmarting them per se if you can out execute them. Speaking as somebody who also plays like that.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you said in terms of Nick, in terms of like the unfavorable matchups, right? Because like I played Honda in 4, and Fei Long was a pain in my ass, and playing Nick was a chore. Like I hated it so much. I couldn't do things that I wanted. I would get wrecked. Like he would be in my head like no other. So like, and for me, like that matchup was terrible, right? But there were a couple other people not as big in our scene that played Fei Long, and when I played them, like my mindset wasn't like, oh man, Fei Long. It was like, you're not Nick, and like I didn't, not to belittle them, but there was one match in particular where there's a tournament where this guy was like really close to beating me with Fei Long, and I was like, I kind of like had to take a pause in between a match, and I was just like sat back and I was just like, this guy isn't doing anything special, and he's not as good as Nick. And I came back and I beat the guy, and like I didn't even shake his hand. Like I was like pissed off at the time. Like I got up out of the chair and I walked away, and I was just like reported my match, and I was just like, it's like, yeah, whatever. Like I was like, I don't know, just like I don't know if that was like a culmination of like what I had to deal with Nick and Fei Long, and then it just came to a head with that guy, and it's just like, hey, you're not gonna beat me. Like Nick might beat me all the time, but it's not gonna be you.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So you projected Nick onto this other guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how if people at the shooting range or something, people will put like a picture of someone they don't like on the dummy. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, I remember just standing up like after I got the final KO and just being like, hell yeah, and then like I got up, I unplugged my stick, and I just, hey, I won 2-1. that was it. I didn't even look back at the guy.
I think that part of that is, like we're saying, Nick was the guy teaching the mind games, but he also knew matchups. So because him not letting you get away with any other Honda stuff that you could do in other matches, or showing you the things he could punish, the knowledge that the homework he did in that matchup is what also helped get in. So like I know a lot of times we contribute mind games to Nick, but that's not all he was by any means. I just wanted to clear that up, because I feel like we're going hard on the mind games thing.
The same with Ernest too. Is that I say Ernest plays like a robot, but that guy will round 1 DP you sometimes. That's actually like a part of his algorithm, is he'll usually round 1 DP you. But
just to show you, hey, don't forget about this move.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
But,
So you basically like those were your training influences into the twilight of Ultra Street Fighter 4, right? What happened next on your fighting game journey?
No, I guess. Well, I had a question real quick. Like, what made you transition? Because I remember vaguely that transition from Akuma to Dudley. Because I remember playing you at the end of one Ranbat, I think, with Akuma, and Akuma has no health, and I remember like life melting away, and I was just like, man, I think at the time I was like, I don't know if this is the character for you kind of thing, because like this is like like you said, Akuma's like one of the best characters in the game, but he's a glass cannon,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like unless you can deal with that, you're gonna die quickly. And then the next time I saw you, you were playing Dudley. So what kind of contributed to that transition or that change?
Yeah, like with Akuma, I had all the setups. So like there was times I would even get like wins on really good people way better than me. Like I would play Isaac online and stuff, and I would win way more than I should have just off of 50-50s and stuff. So when Ultra came out and they nerfed that with Akuma, I was like, okay, I am weak in this neutral / I also didn't know how to pressure people at all without Vortex. So I heard Dudley was good, and I was like, okay, he looks cool. And I played him, and I was like, okay, he's really cool. He's got sick combos. He does a lot of damage. The overhead. I used Dudley as like a way to. I had to learn to stand over people and decide what are you going to do on wake up. Like, are you going to backdash? Are you going to crouch? Am I going to be able to get the overhead off? Are you going to DP? I didn't have to do any of that with Akuma because it was just autopilot, land a sweep. I only had to know how to use one button and know the setups afterwards. And I kind of identified that was a huge issue for me. So I picked Dudley, and I was just stuck with him. But yeah, that was the reason why, was to kind of force myself to like learn a different way of playing. I've kind of done that throughout, is use a character to kind of learn new skills in the game. And I would definitely advise other people to do that. If you played Shoto for the past 10 years, you need to learn how to play footsies without a fireball, because then it's going to make your fireball game better. So that was my mentality with it. It's like, can I play without a fireball? Can I play in someone's face? Or am I really just someone who could sweep with Akuma and do setups? So
yeah. I have that same kind of feeling, as that like I've by and large never played a character with a fireball before. And then I played one in Marvel, which didn't really count. But then when I switched to Chun and 5, like fireball makes footsies so much easier. It just makes it so much easier. And like compared to like when I was playing Ibuki and I'd have to like fish for low strong, and low strong would sometimes not always work, versus being like, this person's sticking a button out. I don't have to worry about the interaction. I'm just going to throw a fireball at it. That's kind of it. And like, I remember we talked to Nico about it last week too. And I asked that same question. I'm like, what do you do when someone's sticking a button out that's going to give you trouble? And he just says, I headbutt it. And so it's the same idea. The headbutt is your fireball. I need to stick out a giant ass hitbox and prevent people from taking space. And I don't have to worry about a hurt box with a fireball.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what rush counters for 4 and 5. So,
yeah. That's a good point.
The thing with the fireball too is that like it forces people to, like, you can open people up in a way, right? Like you're gonna throw a fireball, see what they do. Are they gonna jump? Are they gonna block? Are they gonna absorb it or whatever? And it's a gauge for you to learn your opponent early on. Just as a normal part of your tool and neutral.
Yeah. It's a statement, right? It's a like, I don't actually need to advance in order to pressure you. So what are you going to do about it? You're basically controlling the neutral with that fireball, and they have to react to it, which is you get that for free out of the gates. Just like if you're a Guile player, right? You can kind of just get that for free out of the gates. When in the closed beta for 6, right? People were hyping up Guile a lot, and I'm not sold that he's the absolute best overpowered character. Or like at least in the closed betas that we played. Mm-hmm. But I do think that it's just a natural thing where if you make them come to you, then you're going to have advantage. And fireballs are like the number one way to do that.
Yeah. It's the most basic fighting game kind of style that there is. I mean, I kind of went backwards going from Honda to forcibly kind of learning Sim. I got spoiled with that. That's why it's like when it comes to six, I'm thinking I might lean towards Sim, because like I'd have a fireball. I'd have these limbs that go across the screen, and like it really spoiled me playing somebody like that.
Yeah, I'm worried too about someday not playing a character without a fireball now, because I'm like, will my ground game be any good?
Oh man, yeah. See, maybe it's time to play a character without a fireball. Test yourself.
Grappler John though, like I don't know, man.
Speaking of the fireballs, like. That was one conversation that I think I had with both Ernest and Aziz, which was combining fundamentals and the mind. Like it was that a lot of new players they it's like they throw fireballs just because it's a thing to do. Like okay, I'm not in range to hit you, but I do have fireball, and I feel like they have no idea why they're throwing the fireballs. And I think that is a huge thing throughout fighting games, is knowing exactly why you're doing something. Like what purpose is the move you're doing right now. And with fireballs, you should really think of it more as a poke, which is what they were teaching me. It's like it's not just you're not trying to win off of damage with fireballs. You know, the fireballs are there to get a reaction from the opponent. Yep. Either to make them stop hitting a button, like you said, to get them to jump, to get them to do what you want in some sort of way. And it's not just a thing that you throw out because you can't do anything else right now. And I think that gets a lot of new players killed because you can just read. They haven't done anything in a while. They're going to throw a fireball.
Yeah. That's the irony of the fireball, is that people like you're throwing the fireball not to hit them. You want them to try to dodge it so that way you can manipulate them in moving a certain way. But for a lot of new players, it's like, no, if I don't throw the fireball and I don't hit them, then their life bar is not going to go down. Yeah. So it's really easy to lean on that. And then it's like, fireballs are cheap. See me in the parking lot at the arcade, right?
and because of that, they're like, I'm using fireball. Why not just use the better version of the fireball that I have? And they throw EX fireballs pretty much whenever they have meter. Like if you're playing a new online Ryu or something, you can pretty much guarantee you're never going to get hit by super, because they don't ever have more than 2 bars. It's just if you're going to play a fireball character, please learn what fireballs are for. Like
it's like how Fierce and Roundhouse are the beginner player's favorite buttons too, because it's like, why would I hit the buttons that do less damage? Like I want to hit the big buttons. It makes sense from a service level.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're much deeper than that. Fighting games are much deeper than I want to hit the big button.
Yep. But we need to transition to a game where that rewarded hitting the big button in Street Fighter V. So I'm curious about what your career was like there.
So at the end of Street Fighter 4, I was kind of like a mid guy, you know, like there was a lot of people higher than me. I probably wasn't even top 10 in the scene at the time, you know, like I could beat a top player maybe here or there, but I never beat Benny. Benny whooped my ass every time we played. So leaving Street Fighter 4, I always felt like fundamentally I was sound and I was like a good player, but I just didn't. There was too much to learn coming in 4 years into the game's life. So I was just kind of like, see me in Street Fighter 5. Yeah, I was that guy. But then I did it. Like,
I was gonna say, a lot of people said that. A lot of people said that. See me in 5.
But then, so Street Fighter 5 comes out. I pretty much didn't play any of the betas. Maybe 10 minutes of the betas before the game actually came out, and I kind of got like hamstrung a little bit because, you know, Benny must not have been there because I ended up winning a raffle at TGC. It was a raffle that Armando Angelic had, and it was for a copy of Street Fighter 5. But he's in Phoenix and I'm in Tucson, so I won it. The game comes out on like a Tuesday or something like that. But Ernest and I were living in the same house at the time, so neither one of us bought it because I had a free copy coming. But that weekend was Undefeated. And so I didn't really get to play it before Undefeated until I could get up there to get the copy from Armando. And so then I got bodied at Undefeated. Just got a lot of time to practice. Had fun.
That's why I didn't see you at Undefeated in top 8. That makes sense. I was wondering what you were doing at that time, but now it makes sense. You hadn't even played the game yet. Okay.
And so I went home, grinded, figured out Mika. I picked up Mika because on the trailer, I just saw, you know, she's on the screen, and then something happened, and this other girl comes flying out of the nowhere, and it hits somebody. I was like, all right, Mika has assists. I don't even play Marvel, but I know that's good. So So I picked up Mika, and initially people thought she was bad, but I was playing her and I kept finding cool stuff, and I was like, I don't think she's that bad. And then so after Undefeated, the next week at Nick's house, we would do weekly tournaments. And I show up playing Mika, and Nick is like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you playing Mika? Like, she's terrible. Like, I think Event Hub's, the tier list that's voted on by the community or whatever, had her at like bottom 2. And so long story short, I ended up winning that tournament with Mika. So I went from being like, oh, I'm a non-issue for most people in Street Fighter 4, not top 10 or anything, to, oh, he just randomly won the first Street Fighter 5 tournament at in Tucson. And it was just kind of like this drastic jump to all of a sudden I was at the top for like overnight, seemingly, you know?
That was that was like the unique thing about it, is that it didn't seem like, it wasn't like a gradual rise up the ranks or anything. It was just, you know, Street Fighter 4 mid, and then suddenly Street Fighter 5 top, you know.
Yeah. And then so Rock was there, and the moment that he saw what I was doing with Mika, he's like, nah, she's good. So then I think I beat him that tournament. I beat Rock that tournament. The next tournament, I ended up getting second. And I lost to John Velociraptor because, you know, he went from being a top player in 4 to being a top player in 5. So, and then the third tournament, Rock had picked up Mika. And he won the tournament. So at this point, we're like, okay, Mika's good. Sure enough, at the, you know, towards the end of season 1, she turned out to be top tier. So but yeah, it was like a weird jump for me from going, like, people wouldn't even know that I was in the tournament to like I won it. It was like a very quick jump to where I was a threat to everybody who was playing. And yeah, I pretty much grinded the hell out of Street Fighter 5 for season 1 and had varying amounts of success in Tucson, but I never really like won in Phoenix. Like, I would place, you know, 5th, 3rd sometimes, but I was never able to like close it out in Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of experience with Mika in Phoenix because Jeff was playing her at the start.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was that matchup. You know, me learning a new character at the time with Sim and still trying to get things under control. Yeah, I had a hell of a time playing both of you early on in that game. Like I was shimmies, everything, man. Like I was more susceptible to shimmies than I've ever probably been susceptible to anything in my life. I was like, oh my god, I got shimmied again.
Yeah. Mika actually destroyed Sim in season 1. Like, she was very good. It was just kind of like funny because somebody else who came out of nowhere in season 1 was Ricardo. You know, he showed up playing Sim, and like I beat him early on when he was learning Sim, and then like it was like 2 weeks after that, I think we had like another tournament in Phoenix, and it was just like he came out of nowhere and he beat everybody, myself included. And at the time, none of us knew the match. We also didn't know that he was just really good. So people kind of writing it off as, it's just Sim, you know, that won't ever happen again. Well, it happened again. It happened a lot.
It did.
So, but there was this weird dynamic that Akita and I had in season 1, because I went home and I studied and I figured out the match, and I actually could beat him fairly consistently. The issue is I couldn't beat Reedman consistently. They were playing Guile, and Guile just destroyed Mika. So a lot of times I would just get stopped right before I could face Ricardo in the tournament. And so I spent my season 1 chasing Ricardo because I wanted to prove that I was the guy who could beat him.
Sure.
You know, because people had seen me do it in casuals, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
There was one tournament where I finally won the match before fighting Ricardo. And this entire time, Carlos, Scrub Lord, I forget. Range Tyrant at the
Range
time.
Tyrant,
Yeah. He had been saying, I don't know why everybody's losing to Akita. All he does is teleport. And I'm like, we're just rolling our eyes. Yeah, whatever, dude. And he's like, I just roundhouse him. And that just wins. So, and we're just like, yeah, whatever, bro. Like, it's like, shut up, get out of here. And then that tournament, I win, and I get to that spot where I'm waiting for Ricardo, licking my chops. And Ricardo loses horribly to Carlos. He did everything that he said that he was going to do, and it just all worked. And we were all sitting there with our jaws open, like, all right, you just destroyed the best guy in the scene right now. Okay.
Yeah, and then Carlos was very nonchalant about it, being like, I don't know why he's the best guy. Everyone, just do this.
Yeah, he got up.
Matter of factly.
He's like, see, I told you, just roundhouse. He made it so simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ricardo beat him most of the times after that. But it was hilarious to see him put into practice what he had said.
Yep.
But yeah, so throughout season 1, I kind of was just like at the top, but not a winning person. You know, like until there's a little secret tech here. Is like I had a job where I was getting up really early. So every time I would go to one of these events, I always had like a lack of sleep. It was really late at the end of the tournament, and I just, you don't have the same reactions once you've been up for 20 hours, you know?
Yeah.
So then Rewired happens. And I had just figured out this one thing with Mika that kind of changed everything. I wasn't good at applying offense really with her to the same extent as maybe I was after this point. But one thing I found is that I saw Knuckle Dude do it, and I was like, oh my God, that's a game changer. And she could do stand light kick, crouch light kick, stand jab, and confirm that into Peach and loop that over and over, along with the other slew of dumb stuff she had in season 1, like a plus crouch fierce if you spaced it properly, drop kick, basically an unbeatable anti-air. She was really good. But just before Rewired, I figured out that tech. I was like, oh, I can apply offense very safe. I don't have to go for as many command grabs. I can just
it makes your command grab faster or better anyway, because that counters the command grab, right? Is someone trying to jump out, low short catch, right? And a confirm and a knockdown.
Yeah, it was really dumb. I wonder why they took it away.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so then I end up having like the best performance I've had up to that point in Rewired. I blew through pools. I ended up having to beat Marvin and John to make top 8. And then I ended up getting all the way to 3rd for Rewired. And I was just kind of blown away. I was like, oh man, I never thought at this mini major that I would perform this well with James Chen commentating, and like Sajam was there. And, it was weird. It was like a CPT event commentary wise, So it was, it had plenty of good matches in that top 8, including you, John.
Yep. Who did you beat to get 3rd?
I actually beat John.
Was it John?
Yeah.
Did I get 5th then?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I definitely beat John to get 3rd.
Okay, fair enough. I got 5th. Damn it. I thought I got 4th. Damn it.
I think the commentary is saying something like, I was the only Mocha was on a tear that
he was.
And I was like the only person other than Yusuf to like take a game off of him. And he actually beat Yusuf, and then Yusuf won the whole thing after that. But yeah, those two were definitely on another level. So I felt like closing out season 3, I was maybe in the 4th best position. Ricardo wasn't at Rewired, even though I would have beat him if he was there. But but he was clearly he was beating way more people than I was at the time. So he definitely was better. So those 3 were top 3, and then I was just below them. Season 2, Mika got nerfed hard, as she probably needed to be. But I kind of messed with other characters, a little bit of Geef, a little bit of Rog. But then I ended up going back to Mika, and I think I was better off for it. I kind of learned how to overcome the downsides of the character, and it made me better.
I get you.
Um,
That's a formative experience for a lot of top players, I think, because everybody gets to, well, like, if you put enough time into your character, like you can get to a certain level of play, and eventually though, like people that are better than you are going to figure out like the weaknesses of your character, and that becomes more and more pronounced if you play, for lack of a better phrase, a gimmick character. And I'm not implying that Mika's a gimmick character per se, but there
she is.
are, I play characters with gimmicks too, right? And so the kicker is, once people figure that out, what do you do? And some people, like, they change characters. Some people, I did that. I changed characters once they took away my gimmick in 5, and then some people like fight through it. A lot of people just kind of give up and they walk away, or they they'll go play another game. They'll do it, whatever, right? And so it's a very formative time for, like, because that represents a plateau, right? There's always that general question in the fighting game community of like, what do you do when you plateau? A lot of times it's because your character got figured out, and so how do you evolve that? Do you go deeper? Do you into your character and find out more tech? Do you change characters, etc.? But that to me is harder than gradually working your way up and winning, like with solid fundamentals or whatever like that, because that has a slow incline, and you don't get the returns necessary to keep going sometimes. But on the flip side, you could boost yourself up with gimmicks and then just immediately drop off a cliff once everyone figures you out, and it's that hurts so much more. And so because of that, like it's a, I think it takes a lot of character to be able to pull yourself out of that hole.
Yeah, it was rough, but it was fun in a way to hear people say she's terrible and then beat them. Like there's a little bit of you just kind of, get away from me. Like,
yeah.
But in season 3, she got buffs again. Like she wasn't great, but she was solid. She had more damage and stuff. She got juggles off of certain things she didn't have before. And so like moving on through season 3, I was just kind of like, I was still doing well, but then something happened. There was going to be a tournament that was taking place, and it got delayed by like rain, and the venue got flooded. It was the Red Bull Conquest Phoenix event in like 2018.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. The talking stick got flooded. That was where it was at the time. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, and so then about 2 weeks before that event was going down, where it actually went down, I got like diagnosed with like sleep apnea. And I was like, well, I'd been diagnosed prior to this, but 2 weeks before the event, I actually got like the machine and everything. So I started getting like legit sleep that I didn't know that I hadn't been getting for like probably years at this point. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it's like I could see the Matrix, and like everything was just like slower, and like I could focus better. And so like going into Red Bull, I was super like, I didn't think I was gonna like win it or anything, but I was like, I'm gonna gatekeep some people. I'm not gonna let anyone from out of state win. And so we're at this event. Obviously, Akita is the favorite. He had been destroying everybody for the past 2.5 seasons at this point. Akita's the favorite to win. I win my matches, and then I see Carlos, Purple Ketchup, one
Different
of our
Carlos.
Tucson guys. Yeah. And I see him sit down to play Akita, and I was like, okay. And I'm just talking to people at the event. And then their match ends, and I see them stand up, and I look, and Ricardo's got a sad face, and Carlos has a happy face. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I look, and I see there's an Ibuki on the screen. I'm like, that's not Dawson. Oh my God. So he knocked out probably the hardest person I was going to have to fight, like as in knocked him into losers. So I ended up making it through winners to the top 4 or whatever for the Red Bull, where I had to fight John, who's a training partner. So that can go, anyway.
Sure.
And I ended up getting past that. And then I watched Akita get eliminated. And once he was eliminated, I was like, who's left? And I looked, and it was all like people I had trained with. It was myself, John, Velociraptor, and Isaac. And then there was New. He was a California guy.
Mhm.
And so I was like, wait a minute. I might be able to win this. And so without dragging it on too long, Isaac and I were in grand finals. I ended up winning it. And now I'm going to DC. Something I didn't expect,
Yeah.
at any point. I was like, okay. So now I've got this stick. I've got this great little headset you can't see that says Red
it's
Bull
glowing
Conquest
now. Okay.
Phoenix. Yeah. And yeah, I went to DC where I promptly got bodied. I actually lost a close match to Samurai, who's really good. But then I got bodied by Chris CCH
Guile. Oh yeah, he was known for his guile before he picked up Sakura. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know who this kid was at the time. Yeah, I'm like, who's this kid here with his mom? I'm about to mess him up on stream. Didn't happen. Did not happen that way. I got destroyed. And so I came home like, I need a different character. I was just like, I'm sick of dying to Guile every damn tournament. I need somebody to get past this character. And I tried picking up Birdie, and that actually like took away from the skill level I was playing Mika at. And everything I started losing a lot to people I was beating before. And then the Evo is about to happen for like, what is it, the end of season 4, I think. And then they released Lucia and Poison and Honda. And I'm just like, I don't care about any of those characters. They all look dumb. And then so I go home and I try Lucia, and that arcing fireball, I was like, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. This is a dumb move. Like, I can make this work. So I started playing her, and just everything kind of vibed with Lucia, and I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna play her. And so I started playing her more, started seeing more success, and then kind of leads us a bit to today, where I don't want to say I'm the best, but I'm the best.
I was waiting for it. Yeah, I don't think anyone like since the pandemic at least, and since you started becoming more competent with Lucia, like you've been winning pretty much every local tournament that we had.
Yeah.
We haven't had a ton of local tournaments lately, but
yeah.
I think to close out Street Fighter V, you were the number one guy in our scene. I think it's worth. I'd like to, just because we've talked about your Red Bull Conquest trip in private, but I'd like to ask you, like, did you learn any big lessons there going from local scene to greater community and like playing at that level? Anything that you'd want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I learned that like Arizona has like kind of a style where a lot of people play the player and not the matchup. So you'll be ready for certain things when you're playing a certain guy, but then when you play somebody else playing that same character, there's a whole bunch of gaps in the game that you didn't know about. So when I was there, luckily I didn't really have that much of an issue with that. I kind of always tried to just focus on the tools, but obviously I played Mika, so I did take into account the player at a certain level.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I knew the matchups. But then but everybody I fought knew how to deal with Mika. Like whether it was random people in casuals, like I wasn't getting destroyed there by any means, just mainly the two in the turn. But I couldn't, like one thing people let me get away with for the longest time was doing stand medium punch and then doing like another stand medium punch or hitting a button after when it was -2. And I got away with that for so long. And it's just simple frame data, like in 5 minutes, anybody could have figured out what was negative, based off what I was doing. But it just didn't seem like people did the homework. And that's definitely not the case outside of the scene. It's almost like we're not connected to some kind of network. I think we that was not the case at the end of 5, but certainly in season 3, at that point when not many people were, we didn't have the online Wednesday night fights and things like that where we were constantly playing people from other scenes and people weren't playing as online as much. We kind of cultivated our own little style in the scene where you would see hype matches, don't get me wrong, because you'd see people making all kinds of crazy decisions and reads, but that's not the way everybody else was playing. And they were seeing more success than we were. So
yeah, I have this idea that, like, winning rock, paper, scissors, at the end of the day, the W is the W, right? But you can win by playing rock, paper, scissors with an opponent and outsmarting them because you can memorize their tendencies and whatnot. But the matchup represents like a framework for those rock, paper, scissors games. And the cleaner that you play that matchup, the less times you have to play rock, paper, scissors, because the Miko will stand strong on block and give it to you in those scenarios. And that's not a rock, paper, scissors. That's I won with knowing the matchup. So it can be your crutch to get through lower level play, and to get through pools, really, because then you don't have to diagnose the other person's mental state per se. You can just lean on that matchup. And then you get to the higher level, higher level, where everyone's playing each other because the matchup is so intuitive that you have to break the rules in order to make anything happen,
Yeah. At a certain point, everybody's playing the person, but like you said, it's with that foundation of knowing the matchup. And if your fundamentals are way better than somebody, you might not ever have to even play them. You don't play mind games with them. Right. You can beat people without taking risks. Sometimes you can just go back to neutral.
That's the Ernest way, and I think Ernest will play robotic, right, and try to robot you to death, essentially. And it's really good for people that don't know the matchup.
Yeah, and if you can rely on neutral, like it's funny to see people's reactions sometimes when you have them in the corner and you just back away and you make them make a decision. Yeah, I think Nico told a story like that on the last one, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And in 5, like, we had the added benefit of, if you walk backwards out of the corner, if you let them out of the corner, then you don't risk getting swept into V-trigger and thrown back into the corner. So it behooved you to let them out anyway a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, you guys talk about playing the matchup and versus the player, and I mean, that's something that like, I think a lot of people, it's depending on the matchup, like, sometimes it can be really boring, like, and you can get like people say, like, you can get too cute, like, like me playing Sim, like, if I faced the Geef, I already knew what I was doing. I'm staying the hell away from that guy. I'm poking the hell out of him. I'm throwing fireballs. He's not getting close to me if I can help it at all. But then, like, I'd watch people at times, or or even some of my old matches, I'd see myself try to be like, let me go for this teleport mix-up with this fireball, and I'm like, then I get caught, maybe lose a round real quick, and I'm like, what am I doing? I was just like, I shouldn't be anywhere near this guy at all. But that complacency kind of sets in, and you're just like, I don't want to play the matchup anymore. I want to play how I want to play, or I want to try to get in this guy's head. And then it kind of goes back to what Mike was saying. Like, sometimes you just overcomplicate things. Like, I didn't need to do things like that. It was like, I can just sit here and spam medium kick and roundhouse and throw fireballs and get a win that way. And, at the end of the day, like, I should be satisfied with that because that's what's going to be the most successful for me.
Yeah. There's something to be said about volatility too. When you play the matchup, like, if you have matchup notes, they're usually based around consistent, solid things and less so around reads, right? Like, like, if you have a note on Ryu, it's not like, hey, you might be able to dragon punch his fireball. Like, people don't usually go for that in most scenarios. So they usually go for the safe stuff. And so by prescribing the matchup for your game plan, you essentially are playing safer. It's just by its very nature. Now, like, that completely takes the other player out of the equation. Like, then you can't make those big reads or anything like that. And so that will get you killed. Like, as we talked about in the previous episode, I had brought up a match I had with Kawano, where I was like, I'll play the matchup. I'll just anti-air him when he jumps at me. And then he fucked me up for it, right? Because then it turned into the player game. And so I think you're constantly switching between player and matchup. But from my experience, and Mike, I'd like to see if you could keep me honest on this. At lower levels of player, it's better to lean on that matchup knowledge, and then every now and then take a peek and fight the player. But by and large, matchup is your backbone for your game plan, I think.
Yeah, I think with regards to lower levels, it's like when you're playing the player, you're trying to play based off how they think. And at certain lower levels, the players just don't think. So you can't play against how they're going to think, because they're not thinking. They're going to do stuff, and it's almost like a Mario Kart cube of options. They hit that, and it's spinning on their wake up, and it's going to be one of like 4 things. And if you're wrong, you're going to be in a bad position. And 5 especially was a game about trying your best to never be put in that bad position, because even like gold level players will hit you with a 400 damage full combo if they neutral jump and you teched, they're going to do that max damage. Everybody had max damage. So it made trying to figure out their decisions and playing that style just that much more volatile.
Mm-hmm. And volatility doesn't necessarily equate to bad or that you're going to lose either, because plenty of people I know are the biggest gamblers, and they just know, and that's how they play their style, and they use that to inform their neutral and scare the shit out of people while they're playing. I'm talking about somebody on the call right now. Betty plays like that, in my opinion. He gambles hard and he wins a lot with it because he's got the intuition and the instincts to read people. So like
raffle god.
Yeah, the raffle god, man. So you can't necessarily seal that in instinct, right? You want to exploit that, or rather you want to maximize that potential if you've got the talent, right? But that risk reward varies depending on whether you are playing an online match with a buddy at night, or being flown out to DC and playing Red Bull Conquest and playing casual keys on.
Dude, I did play him and I got destroyed.
Well, very cool. Lots of good top player mentality stuff. As I mentioned in our promotion material for this show, Mike, I consider you one of my current closest training partners. Like, you and I swap fighting game theory a lot, particularly after the in the closing days of 5, where the pandemic forced us online. Phoenix and Tucson, we didn't really have a big bridge between us, I guess. And so it was a good opportunity, I think, for us all being online to kind of get to know each other and play each other a lot more. So I'm glad we're training partners, essentially.
Yeah, same thing. I think we've both grown a lot from it. So
yeah. Because I had a question for both of you, because like you guys, I mean, obviously, with the Tucson Phoenix thing, you guys talk about being training partners now. Like, I think John's touched on this briefly in the past, how he thinks it's going to be more of a collaborative effort versus kind of like the outside scenes with AZ, more than it is going to be more of a interstate rivalry between Tucson and Phoenix. But do you see that still kind of developing in a way at all? I guess this is a question for kind of both of you guys, just in terms of like, not necessarily pride, but just kind of maybe just like a interstate kind of like, just to kind of gauge yourselves, gauge the scenes in both sides.
I've got an answer ready to go. Do you mind if I go first, Mike?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So, we live in the era now where it's online. So like, I think we quickly want to go back to the glory days. That's literally what this podcast episode was, right? Was where we went back and revisited the glory days of offline casuals and the value of the community and whatnot. But, back then social media was different. Back then game distribution was different. I'm not going to own a copy of Street Fighter 6 physically. I don't own a copy of Street Fighter 5 physically. So the delivery mechanisms have changed, and specifically practicing has changed. Now we talk through Discord to arrange matches. We there's online ranking leaderboard systems. Strive has that really unique lobby system. Strive has that hacker problem going on right now. There's just so many new and unique, complicated things that are different from back then in the Street Fighter 4 era. All that to windingly say here that we are going to be moving to an online era, and there's no reason, I think, for Phoenix and Tucson to be separate anymore, given that technology barrier being like that, rather being the fact that the technology is going to solve that location barrier that we have. So, I think that it's less so about being like, all hugs and kisses and stuff and being friendly and whatnot, and more like, no, this is our opportunity to get better at a faster rate, because we can source from the best players of other regions, not just Phoenix, not just Tucson. And as a whole, like, I played the closed beta for Street Fighter 6 when I was picking regions and stuff. Like, I had great connections with the people in Washington. I had great connections with people on the East Coast. So the world's about to get a lot smaller anyway. So we might as well band together as Arizona, I think. Because otherwise, like, Phoenix, like, I love Phoenix, but we're not going to be relevant unless we ban. It's almost like how these corporations keep banding together and buying each other up. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if the West Coast combines, even if we do away with the concept of states. Obviously not in politics or anything, but like in fighting game training strategies, So it's less so of like, hey, I think Tucson and Phoenix should be friends after all the rivalries that we had. And again, the rivalries were good natured. It never really got like really toxic. There were some times when I think we definitely pushed that a little too much. And so I'd rather just avoid that altogether. And let's practice together. Let's train together. Let's trade strategies together and make each other better. It's different than the rivalry motivation. We had Abe on a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago, months ago now. And rivalries do their own share of motivation, but I think that rivalry can be transplanted onto California or to Washington. We have bigger fish to fry now.
Yeah. I think in the past it was a lot of people, like the Phoenix training group versus the Tucson training group. They would train with each other and then come together and see who had the stronger scene. But like, how do we do that now when my main training partners are in Phoenix? Like, do I just play the same guys I play every day, but now we stream it and go, this is some kind of grudge match? Like, I think there's definitely room for like grudge matches. Like if like Nico and Nick want to revive their old thing and be like, well, I'm going to be better at 6 than you. And that's a hype thing. But like, I don't see the hype in me playing, like they're saying, like it's Tucson versus Phoenix when it's myself versus John and we practice constantly. So it's like, we're good because of each other. It's not a test of who has the better training group or anything like that, But I think sticking it to like personal grudge matches is more beneficial, because you could be like, oh, I think you are not very good. Or we had beef in the past and I quit playing fighting games for 6 years and now I come back and I'm still going to beat you now. That kind of stuff could be hype. But yeah, the Tucson versus Phoenix thing is there's not really a Tucson or a Phoenix as of right now,
Yeah.
So I don't foresee that either.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, yeah, John brings up a great point too in terms of like the delivery system, right? Like offline was a big thing, gathering at TGC, gathering at Arcade in the Box or wherever you guys were gathering in Tucson, the police station, whatnot. And, I mean, not that that's going to go away, but it's like, yeah, there's not that division so much in terms of that. Like, we're representing this crew that, like you said, we're training or playing together. Like it's kind of, you guys are kind of all mixed together nowadays.
Yeah. I think there's a balance of like having a healthy respect for the past and like the stuff that rivalry did bring. But like John said, we got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. If we get to a point where we're like hiding tech from each other specifically so that way we can have an edge in that rivalry, that's where we're hurting ourselves more than helping ourselves. There's a benefit to the rivalry being healthy and being a motivator to push each other, and that does resonate with different personality types. It's just that at what point is it harmful, if anything? At what point is it holding us back?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like, yeah, me personally, like, I never, I like the idea of it, the Tucson Phoenix thing, but I was never really big into this or that. Like, I'd throw out, a couple tourneys here and have a bounty or something like that. But for me, like, the things that resonated with me personally were a lot of the personal rivalries. Like, who was beating me personally in tournament? I didn't care if they were from Tucson or Phoenix. Like, was this guy beating my ass all the time every time I came out? Then that's who I was going to focus on, who was my measuring stick. It wasn't, oh, these guys from Tucson are beating me. Like, I wasn't worried about necessarily that. Like, I bring up Ernest a lot. You guys were talking about, we were talking about it initially, right? Like, he's the butt of a lot of jokes, but that's really kind of out of respect, right? Like, that was the guy that was like a personal demon to me that would constantly just beat me every tournament I got. So that chance when I got to go up there and finally, put it to him, like, that was a shining moment for me. And it's because of that. It wasn't because he was from Tucson. It was because this guy was just beating the brakes off of me every chance that he got.
Yeah.
Ernest has a lot of people gunning for him, and that's usually for a good reason, because he's pretty fucking good at these games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get you. Well, cool. I think that'll about wrap our episode up today. Any shout outs, Mike?
Shout out to the three pillars, like they're the guys that helped me. Like there's Aziz, Ernest, my wife, Nick. Those are the three guys. But then there's also people who would play me a lot when I was like just starting out, and I couldn't give them any kind of challenge. Those are like Isaac and Jake. Can't forget about Jake Rock. All those guys. They've all like contributed. I'm just a melting pot of all of their information, and this is what came out of it. So hopefully I can continue and make it worthwhile for the time they spent in 6, So yeah, shout outs to all those guys.
Well said. That is how you have pride in your scene. Truly. Well, thanks everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you later.